These are the most shocking, interesting historical photos, and the most unusual objects from the past. Let's get 100,000 subscribers. A man stands on top of a telegraph pole in Cairo, Illinois, early 1900s. Such daredevil stunts were performed to attract crowds in small American towns. In 1932, American Captain Alfred Dean caught a giant manta ray off the coast of Florida. The creature measured over 5 meters across and weighed nearly a ton. At the time, such catches were celebrated as record-breaking feats in sport fishing. In 1965, the first model of the starship USS Enterprise, NCC 1701, was completed for the television series Star Trek. The 3-meter model was built by producers and model makers in California. It was later used in promotional shots and as a basis for the larger filming miniature. In 1942, 16-year-old Norma Jean Mortensen, later known as Marilyn Monroe, married James Dougherty in Los Angeles. The marriage was arranged partly to keep her from returning to foster care. Monroe divorced Dougherty in 1946, shortly before beginning her modeling career. Madrid, Spain, 1953. A Catholic funeral procession moves through the city streets, led by clergy and altar servers. The boy in the foreground swings a thurible, filling the air with incense as part of the rite. A German paratrooper carries a wounded comrade during the Eastern Front in 1942. Soldiers were equipped with winter uniforms as temperatures dropped to extreme lows. The photo highlights the harsh conditions faced by troops in the Soviet Union during World War II. Leather riding boots from the 17th century, used in equestrian tournaments known as Certamen Equestre. The boots feature cutout designs, silk inserts, and decorative gilded elements. They are preserved today as rare examples of aristocratic European riding fashion. The RMS Titanic in dry dock at Belfast, 1912. Workers stand beneath the massive stern, showing the scale of its 3 propellers. The ship was launched that year as the largest ocean liner in the world. Aerial view of the Western Front, 1917. British trenches run along the left side, while German trenches occupy the right. Such photographs were used for reconnaissance, revealing the dense network of fortifications in World War I. The first known photograph of the Andromeda Galaxy, taken in 1888 by Isaac Roberts. The image was captured using a 20-inch reflector telescope with long-exposure photography. It provided early visual evidence that spiral nebulae were separate stellar systems beyond the Milky Way. Jerusalem, 1961. Adolf Eichmann, a former SS officer responsible for organizing mass deportations during World War II, sits in a glass booth at his trial. It was the first televised trial in history, drawing global attention as he was found guilty and sentenced to death. Georgia, early 1920s. Armed Georgian partisans organized resistance against the advancing Red Army, following the Soviet invasion in 1921. Despite fierce local uprisings, the Democratic Republic of Georgia was absorbed into the Soviet Union. Crew members aboard a German Zeppelin during a winter flight, World War I. The open gondola exposed airmen to freezing temperatures at high altitude. Zeppelins were used for reconnaissance and bombing missions over Europe between 1914 and 1918. Tuskegee, Alabama, 1942. African-American cadets trained for the U.S. Army Air Corps at the Tuskegee Institute. These men became the Tuskegee Airmen, the first black military aviators in U.S. history, whose service paved the way for desegregation in the armed forces. England, 1944. A dog named Salvo, trained as a paradog, completes a parachute jump during World War II exercises. Such dogs were used by British airborne units for carrying equipment, detecting mines, and aiding troops after landings. New Mexico, July 16, 1945. The Trinity test captured 0.025 seconds after detonation shows the first atomic fireball expanding over the desert. This marked the beginning of the nuclear age and the culmination of the Manhattan Project. June 6, 1940. British Expeditionary Force soldiers crowd ships as they returned to England after evacuation from Dunkirk. The operation rescued over 330,000 Allied troops, preventing their capture by advancing German forces. Dresden, January 1952. Workers clear rubble on Muensgasse Street in front of the ruins of the Frauenkirche, destroyed in the Allied bombings of 1945. The church remained in ruins throughout the Cold War and was fully reconstructed only after German reunification. Western Front, 1916. 2 German soldiers pose with a mule, all wearing gas masks during World War I. Chemical weapons had become a major threat, leading to the development of protective gear for both troops and animals. Manila, 1988. After the fall of Ferdinand Marcos, investigators found over 2,500 pairs of shoes belonging to his wife, Imelda Marcos. The collection became a global symbol of excess and corruption under the Marcos regime. Pripyat, 1986. Personal belongings of evacuated residents were collected and destroyed due to radioactive contamination after the Chernobyl disaster. Thousands of homes were abandoned overnight, leaving entire districts uninhabitable. St. Petersburg, 1910s. A sobering-up cell where intoxicated individuals were held overnight under medical supervision. The first Russian sobering station had opened in Tula in 1902, founded by physician Fyodor Arkangelsky. Marion Stafford, American actress and model, rose to fame in the 1950s. She appeared on the cover of Playboy magazine in March 1956, becoming one of the era's most recognizable pin-up figures. Stafford later worked in television and remained a popular personality of mid-century American pop culture. Ellis Island, New York, early 1900s. Immigrants line up at the money exchange after arriving in the United States. The processing station handled over 12 million newcomers between 1892 and 1954. Moscow, January 31st, 1990. Employees pose in front of the first McDonald's restaurant in the Soviet Union. On opening day, more than 30,000 people stood in line, marking a major cultural moment at the end of the Cold War. Baikonur Cosmodrome, November 1988. The Soviet space shuttle Buran completed its first and only orbital flight entirely in automatic mode. The mission lasted 206 minutes and demonstrated the USSR's ability to land a spacecraft without a crew. Germany, World War I. Soldiers operate an experimental anti-aircraft gun mounted on a wheeled carriage. Such early designs marked the beginning of organized air defense against enemy aircraft. Germany, 1918. Soldiers prepare a military observation balloon for use on the Western Front. Such balloons were employed to direct artillery fire and monitor enemy troop movements during World War I. United States, 1923. A 10-cent donation certificate issued by the organization Friends of Soviet Russia promised to feed an orphan child for one day. Such campaigns were launched in response to the famine in the Soviet Union following the Russian Civil War. United States, 1924. A publicity photo known as Bathing Beauties was staged to promote new swimsuit styles of the decade. Such images reflected the growing popularity of beach culture and the loosening of social norms in the Roaring Twenties. Korea, 1950-1953. U.S. soldiers light cigarettes from the hot barrel of an M2 Browning .50 caliber machine gun. The weapon, introduced in 1933, became one of the most widely used heavy machine guns in history and is still in service today. Pacific Ocean, 1958. The United States conducted Operation Hardtack Shars, a series of nuclear tests including underwater detonations. The explosion created a massive water column hundreds of meters high, testing the effects of nuclear blasts on naval vessels. Saratov Region, USSR, April 12, 1961. The scorched re-entry capsule of Vostok 1 landed after completing the world's first human spaceflight. Cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin ejected before touchdown, as the design required parachute descent separate from the capsule. Western Front, 1918. American soldiers pose with a destroyed German tank, originally a captured British Mark IV. These early rhomboid tanks, first deployed in 1916, were among the most significant innovations of World War I warfare. Lviv region, USSR, 1975. Two brothers built a homemade aircraft powered by a Dnieper motorcycle engine in an attempt to escape across the border. The improvised plane was intercepted, and the escape effort failed. Western Front, World War I. A British Ruston 75 HP tractor tows an 8-inch howitzer along a road lined with trees. Agricultural machinery was widely adapted for heavy artillery transport during the war. United States, late 1940s. A rare photograph of Marilyn Monroe during her early modeling career before her rise to Hollywood fame. At the time, she frequently posed for lifestyle shoots that helped build her public image. Early 1900s. Harry Houdini, the world-famous escape artist, photographed in a straitjacket from which he regularly freed himself during public performances. His daring escapes from restraints and locked containers made him an international sensation and redefined stage illusion. Obninsk, USSR, June 26, 1954. The world's first nuclear power plant was connected to the grid, producing 5 megawatts of electricity. The Obninsk plant marked the beginning of civilian nuclear energy and operated until 2002. Bergen-Belsen, Germany, April 1945. Women prisoners received bread rations shortly after the liberation of the concentration camp by British forces. The camp held over 60,000 inmates at liberation, with thousands dying from starvation and disease in the following weeks. Bikini Atoll, Marshall Islands, July 25, 1946. The United States conducted Test Baker, an underwater detonation of a 23-kiloton nuclear bomb as part of Operation Crossroads. The blast sank several warships and marked one of the first studies of nuclear effects on naval fleets. Berlin, 1961. View from West Berlin toward East Berlin shortly before the Berlin Wall was constructed. The border was initially secured with barbed wire and guard posts before the concrete wall was erected later that year. USA, late 19th century. Advertisement for Dr. Scott's electric flesh brush, a quack medical device claimed to cure ailments from rheumatism to kidney trouble. Such products were part of the booming patent medicine industry before stricter regulation of medical advertising. Hiroshima, August 6, 1945. A rare ground-level photo shows the mushroom cloud from the atomic bomb, taken about 10 kilometers east of the city in Kaitaichi. Very few images of the explosion were captured from the ground, making this one of the most valuable visual records of the event. October 11, 1968. Donna Isley, wife of astronaut Don Isley, waits for news during the launch of Apollo 7. This was NASA's first crewed Apollo mission after the Apollo 1 tragedy, making it a high-risk flight. The successful 11-day mission proved the Apollo spacecraft's reliability and opened the way to the moon landings. Workers at a lingerie factory on strike, 1937. The women marched in the very garments they produced to protest low wages and poor working conditions. This rare image captures one of the earliest examples of labor protests using bold public performance. A can-can dancer resting backstage at the Moulin Rouge Cabaret, Paris, 1953. The Moulin Rouge, opened in 1889, became world famous for its can-can performances. This rare backstage photo captures the exhaustion behind the glamour of Paris nightlife. Crowds gather at Shibuya Station beside the bronze statue of Hachiko, 1935. Hachiko, the Akita dog, became a symbol of loyalty after waiting daily for his deceased owner for nearly 10 years. This photo shows the day of his death, when Tokyo citizens honored him at the very spot he had kept vigil. Advertisement for quinine whiskey, United States, early 1900s. Marketed as the only drink that stops a cold, this tonic combined Kentucky whiskey with quinine, then widely used against malaria, influenza, and fevers. Such remedies reflected an era before modern regulations, when alcohol and opiate-based cures were sold as legitimate medicine. The first Cadillac dealership in New York City, early 1900s. Cadillac showrooms like this one marked the rise of the American luxury automobile market, showcasing some of the most advanced vehicles of their time. Soviet villagers examining the wreckage of a downed German aircraft, 1944. Such scenes were common on the Eastern Front, where local civilians often witnessed the remains of air battles fought overhead. Match production line in Sweden, 1940. Rows of matchsticks are fixed onto rotating drums for dipping into chemical solutions during the mass manufacturing process. Captured German V-2 rocket prepared for a test launch at White Sands Proving Ground, New Mexico, May 10, 1946. These launches provided the United States with vital data on high-altitude flight and ballistic missile technology. The eruption of Kluchevskaya Sopka volcano, Kamchatka, February 25, 1945. Rising over 4,800 meters, it is the highest active volcano in Eurasia and one of the most active on Earth, with eruptions recorded for over 7,000 years. London, 1963. Formula One cars being loaded onto a BOAC cargo aircraft. In the early 1960s, the global expansion of Formula One required transporting entire grids of racing machines by air, marking the beginning of modern logistics in international motorsport. A USAAF Spitfire MKVC of the 31st Fighter Group, brought down by friendly fire off the coast of Italy during Unearthed. The 31st Fighter Group flew British-built Spitfires before transitioning to P-51 Mustangs, highlighting the Allies' complex mix of aircraft and the tragic risks of misidentification in combat. A cigarette accessory from the 1940s, a lightweight aluminum ashtray that clipped directly onto the holder. Marketed as a way to stop ash from spilling, it was one of many inventive and short-lived smoking gadgets of the mid-20th century. Crew members of the Russian submarine Kursk, with their families in Vidyayevo, Murmansk region, 1990s. Just a few years later, in August 2000, the submarine tragically sank in the Barents Sea, with all 118 crew on board. San Francisco coast, August 14, 1968. The decommissioned submarine USS Devilfish is sunk during naval exercises. Originally commissioned in 1944, the Gato-class sub served in the Pacific before being retired and used for target practice. In the 1930s, a mechanical chiropractor was promoted as a cure for headaches, poor digestion, and spinal issues. The self-operated machine stretched and massaged the patient's body, with the user providing the motion. Demonstrated in Los Angeles, it reflects the era's fascination with health gadgets and pseudo-medical devices. An Ainu family with a Japanese man and a bear, 1940s. The Ainu, an indigenous people of northern Japan, practiced a ritual called Iomante, in which a bear cub was raised by the community and later released or sacrificed as part of their spiritual traditions. An advertisement for the American vibrator, early 1900s. At the time, vibrators were marketed as medical devices, claimed to cure nervousness, poor circulation, headaches, and even improve complexion. They were sold as respectable household appliances long before their modern association. Soviet exit visa, 1984. In the USSR, citizens could not travel abroad without an exit visa. These documents were tightly controlled by the KGB and Ministry of Internal Affairs, making foreign travel one of the rarest privileges of the Soviet era. British patrol in Aden, 1965 and 66. At that time, Aden, a British colony in present-day Yemen, was in the middle of the Aden emergency, a guerrilla war against British rule. Despite the tense atmosphere, soldiers often appeared casually dressed, as seen here, patrolling the streets with minimal protective gear. Soviet armored car crew repairing a destroyed railway track near the front line, 1943. The vehicle is a BA-10, widely used for reconnaissance and support missions. Kenya wildlife rangers guard one of the last northern white rhinos from poachers. Armed patrols operate 24/7 to protect the species, whose global population has been reduced to just a handful by illegal horn trade. One of the earliest known photographs of a tornado taken near Garnett, Kansas in April 1884. Such images are extremely rare from the 19th century, making this a unique visual record of severe weather long before modern storm tracking existed. Assembly line of Rembrandt televisions at the VEB Sachsenwerk-Radeberg factory, East Germany, 1954. The plant became one of the largest electronics producers in the GDR, later known for the RFT brand that equipped many households across the Eastern Bloc. Passengers inside a Canadian Pacific Railway tourist car, 1875. Such cars were designed to carry settlers and workers across long distances at low cost, with simple wooden bunks and minimal comfort. They played a key role in populating Western Canada during the rapid railway expansion of the late 19th century. Reichsautobahn, Berlin, Königsberg, 1930s. Germany's Autobahn network, launched in the 1930s, was the first high-speed road system of its kind in the world. It symbolized both modern engineering ambition and the regime's focus on infrastructure, though much of the construction relied on forced labor. Advertisement for the Trados, nose shaper, early 1900s USA. The device promised to reshape noses without surgery, showing before and after results. Such gadgets were aggressively sold despite lacking any medical effectiveness. Steve Jobs presenting the Macintosh 128K, January 24, 1984. It was the first computer in the Macintosh line, featuring a graphical user interface and mouse. This launch marked a turning point in personal computing history. German soldiers with a full-scale wooden replica of a British Mark I tank, 1918. Such mock-ups were built to train recruits in anti-tank tactics. The replica reproduced the size and shape of the original, but was made of wood and mounted on wheels. The first ARPANET router, known as an IMP, Interface Message Processor, which sent the world's first internet message in 1969. Built by BBN Technologies, it connected UCLA and Stanford Research Institute. This marked the beginning of what later became the modern internet. The wreck of the German battleship Bismarck, lying at a depth of about 4,800 meters in the Atlantic Ocean. It was discovered in June 1989 by Robert Ballard, the same oceanographer who found the Titanic. The ship was sunk on 27 May 1941 after a fierce battle with the British Royal Navy. Klondike Gold Rush, 1897. Miners posing with gold dust and nuggets washed from a single claim in just 15 days. The Klondike Rush, 1896 to 1899, drew over 100,000 fortune seekers to the Yukon, though only a fraction actually struck it rich. Early 20th century sideshow performer. Men with congenital limb differences were often exhibited in circuses and traveling fairs as human curiosities. Despite the exploitation, many built careers in show business, turning their condition into a source of income and public recognition. Soviet soldiers with prisoners of Auschwitz, January 1945. The Red Army liberated the camp on January 27, 1945, revealing the full scale of Nazi crimes. About 7,000 weakened prisoners remained alive, while more than 1.1 million people had been murdered there. Amsterdam, July 1942. German authorities ordered civilians to surrender their dogs. The animals were gathered at the Olympic Stadium and later used by the Wehrmacht, often for dangerous tasks such as mine detection. Douglas A-4, Skyhawk caught by the arresting barrier on a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier in the late 1950s. The aircraft was used as a light attack jet, designed for carrier operations. Such accidents were common during early jet carrier aviation, highlighting the risks of naval flight operations. Interior of a German Tiger. I-Tank, World War II. The driver's position included a steering wheel, transmission controls, and limited visibility through narrow vision slits. Despite its heavy armor and firepower, operating the Tiger was extremely difficult in cramped conditions. AM/FM stereo microcassette recorder player, combined with a calculator and digital clock with alarm, 1983. This multifunctional device reflected the trend of the 1980s toward compact, all-in-one electronics. It symbolized the growing demand for portable technology and personal gadgets. Audi Type K prototypes with streamlined bodies, Berlin, 1931. The cars were designed by engineer Paul Jarre, who applied aeronautical principles to reduce drag and improve fuel efficiency. Although innovative, the project remained experimental and never reached mass production. Israel, 1969. A female soldier being measured to ensure her skirt length complies with Army dress regulations. The Israeli Defense Forces maintain strict rules on uniform appearance as part of discipline and order. Such inspections were common practice during that period. Ploiești, Romania, August 1, 1943. An American B-24 Liberator bomber flies low over the Astra Romana oil refinery during Operation Tidal Wave. The raid targeted Romania's vital oil facilities, crippling Axis fuel supplies, but resulted in heavy U.S. losses with over 50 aircraft shot down. Nevada Test Site, August 7, 1957. A massive nuclear explosion sends a shockwave across the desert, knocking down a research balloon that had been flying at an altitude of 5 kilometers. These tests were part of Operation Plumbob, one of the largest nuclear test series in U.S. history. German wartime bread from World War I, made with only 15% rye flour. The rest consisted of bran, 25%, dried potato peels, 40%, and even ground straw, 20%. Such substitutes reflected the severe food shortages Germany faced during the war. A London family beside their private backyard air raid shelter, 1940. During the Blitz, many households built small shelters to protect themselves from nightly German bombing raids. These improvised defenses became a vital part of civilian survival in wartime Britain. The Norden bomb sight, invented by Carl Norden, became one of the most expensive and advanced military technologies of its time. Developed in the United States during the interwar period, it allowed bomber crews to calculate precise bomb trajectories, compensating for altitude, speed, and wind. Widely used in World War II, it was considered a top-secret device and a key instrument for strategic bombing campaigns. Woodstock Festival, 1969. Among the 500,000 attendees, even nuns were spotted, sharing peace signs and joining the atmosphere of unity. The iconic event became a symbol of counterculture, music, and freedom that transcended social and religious boundaries. China's first nuclear bomb test, October 16, 1964. The 22-kiloton device was detonated at the Lop Nur test site in Xinjiang, making China the fifth nuclear power after the USA, USSR, UK, and France. The successful test marked a major milestone in China's military and geopolitical rise during the Cold War. Michigan, 1962. Magician Larry Jones, performing illusions with his family at home. Household furniture and props were adapted for classic tricks, such as levitation and sawing in half. The photo reflects the era's fascination with stage magic and its integration into family entertainment. Samarkand, Russian Empire, 1890s. A group of itinerant circus performers posing for a photograph. Traveling circuses of that era often included acrobats, musicians, and sideshow acts, moving from town to entertain local audiences. Such troupes were a rare source of public spectacle in Central Asia before cinema and modern theaters spread. Berlin, May 1945. Soviet frontline cameramen Alexander and Evgeny Alexeyev filming the final battles of World War II. Their footage became part of the documentary chronicles that recorded the fall of Nazi Germany. War correspondents and cameramen risked their lives on the front lines to preserve authentic visual history. New York, 1925. A policeman demonstrates a rare weapon seized from street bandits. It combines elements of a mace and bats designed to deliver heavy blows. Such homemade hybrids were often used in the criminal environment of the early 20th century. United States, 1923. Early traffic lights were operated manually by policemen at intersections. Automatic electric signals only began to spread widely in American cities during the late 1920s. Paris, Place de la Concorde, 1938. A touring tandem tows a box-type child trailer, an interwar DIY solution for family transport before child seats and broad car ownership. The tandem is outfitted for city use with full fenders, a bulb horn, and a handlebar headlamp with cable-operated rim brakes for the wet cobblestones. U.S. Army Paratrooper Radio Man Kit, C, 1942-44, T5 parachutes, M1 carbine with bayonet, Colt M1 MK2 grenades, ammo pouches, knife, gloves, and gas mask. The SCR-300 BC-1000 FM radio, with headset, antenna sections, and spare batteries, was the standard W2 walkie-talkie for airborne units. Also included are a flashlight, maps, first aid items, and signal flares, essential gear for communication and survival behind enemy lines. Young Arnold Schwarzenegger, jogging in a bathrobe, New York, late 1960s. At the time, he had recently emigrated from Austria and was training intensely while beginning his career in bodybuilding and film. Moscow flood of 1908. In the spring of that year, the Moskva River overflowed its banks, submerging large parts of the city and reaching the Kremlin walls. It was one of the strongest floods in Moscow's history, severely disrupting transportation and city life. Mother and child wearing gas masks, United Kingdom, 1938. On the eve of World War II, Britain distributed millions of protective masks to civilians in fear of chemical warfare. Special models were designed even for infants, enclosing the whole body with a filter for breathing. Vintage Coca-Cola advertisement, mid-20th century. The poster compares world leaders like Hitler, Lenin, Napoleon, and Julius Caesar, stating, "Only one launched a campaign that conquered the world," referring to Coca-Cola's global success. It's an example of bold marketing that used historical figures to emphasize the brand's dominance. San Francisco, April 1906, the ruins of City Hall after the devastating earthquake and subsequent fires. The disaster destroyed over 80% of the city and left more than 200,000 people homeless, marking one of the worst natural catastrophes in U.S. history. Berlin, 1948. The demolition of one of the massive German flak towers, Flakturm, built during World War II to defend the city from Allied air raids. These reinforced concrete fortresses housed anti-aircraft guns, shelters for civilians, and storage facilities, and were so heavily constructed that dismantling them after the war required tons of explosives and years of effort. London, 1951. An aerial view of 88 football pitches set up in one location, a striking example of post-war Britain's passion for the sport. This massive arrangement was part of a youth and amateur football festival, demonstrating how deeply football was embedded in everyday culture and community life in the UK. Tokyo, 1978. The Japanese premiere of the first Star Wars film, A New Hope, 1977, drew huge crowds as seen by the massive billboard dominating a busy intersection. The movie's release in Japan was a cultural milestone, introducing George Lucas's space epic to one of the world's largest film markets and sparking a fan following that endures to this day. A French thermonuclear test at Mururoa Atoll, French Polynesia, 1971. The photograph captures the iconic mushroom cloud rising nearly 40 kilometers away from the camera, a stark reminder of Cold War-era nuclear testing. France conducted dozens of such atmospheric tests in the Pacific before moving them underground in 1974. Soviet Front, 1943. Ammunition carrier Kuzabekov throws a case of supplies to a heavy machine gun crew during battle. The photograph, taken by war correspondent Olga Lander, captures the intensity and improvisation of frontline logistics in World War II. Cherbourg, France, 1944. French women accused of collaborating with German occupiers are publicly paraded with their heads shaved as punishment. Such humiliations became widespread across liberated France, symbolizing both retribution and social condemnation after years of occupation. London, 1908. Italian marathon runner Dorando Pietri collapses multiple times from exhaustion during the Olympic marathon. Officials assist him across the finish line, leading to his dramatic disqualification despite finishing first. A moment that became one of the most iconic in Olympic history. Vladivostok, 1945. Barrage balloons raised over Golden Horn Bay to protect the city and naval base from potential air raids. These massive balloons, tethered with steel cables, were used as an air defense measure to obstruct enemy aircraft from low-level bombing runs. Adrian and Fedor Evtikiev, photographed in the 1870s, both suffered from hypertrichosis, a rare genetic condition causing excessive hair growth over the body and face. Such individuals were often exhibited in European circuses and freak shows, drawing public curiosity. An advertisement for Sony's first portable video cassette recorder, 1967. The device weighed just 12 pounds, about 5.4 kg, and was marketed as revolutionary for allowing video recording outside of studios. It symbolized a turning point in consumer electronics, making personal video documentation more accessible and mobile. Napoleon's bathtub from his exile on St. Helena, early 19th century. Made of sheet copper, it was used during the emperor's final years, while under British custody. Today it stands as a rare artifact of his everyday life in isolation before his death in 1821. A Japanese soldier on guard atop the Great Wall of China during the Second Sino-Japanese War, late 1930s. Following Japan's invasion of China in 1937, parts of the wall were occupied and used for military positions. The image symbolizes both the strategic importance and the historical weight of the conflict. Mushroom-shaped iceberg captured during the Australasian Antarctic Expedition, 1911-1914, photographed in 1912. The expedition, led by Douglas Mawson, documented unique natural formations while exploring the uncharted Antarctic coast. Fuel tanks for V-2 rockets on the assembly line inside Tunnel B of the underground Dora Mittelbau factory, 1944. The facility, built with forced labor under harsh conditions, was a key site for Nazi Germany's rocket production. Thousands of prisoners perished while constructing and working in these tunnels, making the V-2 program both a technological breakthrough and a symbol of human suffering. A Russian soldier fires from a trench without exposing himself to return fire, 1914. This early World War I photograph shows the adaptation of defensive tactics to survive the deadly accuracy of modern rifles and machine guns. Soldiers relied heavily on cover, developing trench systems that would soon dominate the eastern and western fronts. Cockpit of the Spirit of St. Louis, the aircraft flown by Charles Lindbergh during the first solo non-stop transatlantic flight in 1927. The plane had no front windshield. Instead, Lindbergh relied on side windows and a retractable periscope for forward vision. This minimalist design allowed extra space for fuel tanks, which made the historic New York to Paris journey possible. Hughes Cowan, photographed in 1949 as part of the circus sideshow tradition in the United States. At just 23 years old, he reportedly weighed 710 pounds, 322 klaitskis, and stood 6 feet tall. During that era, people with extreme physical characteristics were often exhibited in traveling circuses and fairs as fat men, reflecting both the fascination and exploitation of human curiosities in popular entertainment. Front page of Le Petit Journal, January 9th, 1916, France. The illustration titled Le Général Hiver, General Winter, depicts the brutal Russian winter as a giant soldier defeating the German army. This allegory reflects the long-standing notion that Russia's harsh climate has historically played a decisive role in repelling invaders, from Napoleon's campaign in 1812 to the battles of World War I. Subscribe to the channel and write your opinion in the comments.